Hello, ladies and gentlemen. A very short disclaimer for you. Due to the fact that the majority of my audience do not usually watch World of Warcraft content, there is a backstory introduction thing for the first 2 minutes. If you want to skip past that to the actual review, there's timestamps in the video.
This war is far from over.
I first played World of Warcraft as early as 2006, 2005. I think AQ had been out for a long time, and Naxxramas just released, and then I started playing. I think I was... how old was I? Good lord. About 11? I want to say like 11, or 11 or 12. So I was a kid, and I was useless. I mean, my first character was a hunter, dwarf, named Goeat, who promptly reached about level 10 before I got my name reported, and I had to change my name to Goeat. That was then immediately reported, and I had to change the name to Goeat Pie. So if you take anything away from that story, it's that that guy in your raid who never uses a microphone and is terrible at the game, that claims he's like 20-something, he might be 12. You might be onto something. Your suspicions could be correct. But I digress. It probably wasn't until Wrath of the Lich King that I became fairly competent, air quotes. In TBC, I mostly spent my time in arenas and PvP, griefing people.
Is this the official meeting spot before Gruul every week?
Yep. It'll work eventually, Cloudy. It'll work. It's all about patience. Hey, there he goes.
He didn't make it.
Yes.
Then Wrath and Cataclysm is where I really started raiding. Successfully. I will not and refuse to call whatever the hell I did in Vanilla successful.
Jesus Christ!
Ah, boys. Fucking hell.
I warned you, but did you listen to me? Oh, no.
We've got it.
Which, after quitting World of Warcraft about half 100 times prior to it, is the reason that I returned for World of Warcraft Classic. Even though you think you do, but you don't, I personally actually did want to go back and experience Vanilla as an adult and not completely useless.
We're just gonna wipe like up here. We're just gonna wipe up here.
Run away? What?
Go up here. Up
Why
here.
am I running away?
Do you see the scorpions when they're really angry, right? And they get fucking big and strong, right?
Good job,
Good job. Okay, no more pets, guys. I told you to get rid of pets.
Guys, stop up!
Is this a bad time to ask for a gamble?
We're gonna have to look into it.
How does it work?
I know not, my liege.
Consult the Book of Armaments.
But then Blizzard proceeded to show its true colors, got really greedy, started stealing breast milk. And the rest is history. I quit the game. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how we find ourselves with private servers. Ultimately, I played a private server called Ascension for about a year or two, which is an entirely different video, until the day, ladies and gentlemen, that a legally grey video was uploaded to the internet. The private server called Turtle WoW was remaking vanilla World of Warcraft in the Unreal Engine. The video was promptly immediately taken down by Blizzard, but myself and my autistic friend decided, to hell with it, let's play World of Warcraft again. We haven't played since Classic. It'll be fun. Probably. Maybe. We'll start things off in a somewhat chronological order, ladies and gentlemen, because starting this particular server, I had two distinct issues. Concerns. Less issues, more concerns. Number one is something that I wasn't personally concerned about because I'd already played Ascension for like 2 years, but I know it's on the minds of a lot of players if they've never played a private server before. Basically, the concern that the server might get shut down by Blizzard and all your work will be for nothing is a concern that I always had prior to ever playing private servers, but I quickly realized is just not really an issue. Turtle WoW just had its 6-year anniversary. Ascension WoW has been up for 8 years, and the private server Warmain has been around for about 9, I believe. All of these are going strong today. There's even more private servers that I have never played that are still going strong. I think the root cause of this concern is probably stemming from the Nestarius private server situation. The too long didn't read being Nestarius was issued a cease and desist by Blizzard. There was a massive backlash when the server shut down because of it. Blizzard got themselves in some really hot water, and to my knowledge, they have never again issued a cease and desist to any private servers. I believe that Nestorius was a teachable moment for Blizzard, and instead of fighting the private servers, they have now instead moved to copying all of their ideas and putting it into Season of Mastery instead. Because if you've played Season of Mastery, 90% of all of the features is basically just taken from various private servers. So, ultimately, the issue of legality, of cease and desisting, of any kind of concern in that regard, you don't have to worry. I really believe it's a non-issue, I'm not concerned, and I don't believe anybody else should be. The second concern, ladies and gentlemen, such as it is, upon doing any kind of research about Turtle WoW on the internet, aside from the legality stuff, you may find yourself reading several Reddit posts or forum posts claiming that Turtle WoW is extremely woke, or that GMs are zealous, or stuff like that. Horror stories about how you'll get banned for the slightest provocation. I honestly wouldn't even bring this up if it weren't for the fact that I did encounter this perception that some people seem to have about Turtle WoW. It does not hold water at all. I have played for a considerable enough amount of time now. I've not encountered this once. As long as you're not wandering around the place screaming racial slurs for some reason, you're gonna be fine. There are, as is basically unavoidable these days, some woke and easily offended people in the video games as players, but I mean, that's everywhere nowadays, so I won't hold that against the server. As with any MMO, ladies and gentlemen, you find a group of like-minded people and you have fun playing with those guys. I'm certain there's a guild or a group of people in Turtle WoW that you will get along with, no matter how snowflakey you may or may not be. But if you're watching my videos, then you're already pretty much based and red-pilled, so, you know. At the end of the day, the GMs have never really given me any trouble. Yeah, that one time that GM whispered me during a battleground because I stopped moving for 5 seconds to text my girlfriend. But other than that, the GMs have been fine. Oh, I lied. There's a third concern, ladies and gentlemen. This is all sounding rather negative, I suppose, but not really. The previous 2 points are largely dismissed. They're not a concern that really affects anybody and not anything to worry about. The only overarching issue I've had with Turtle WoW, largely towards the end game, is purely the fact that it's running on the old vanilla client, and that client sucks. I can't sugarcoat it. It's the old client. It's the old 2006 held together by duct tape client. That's what it is. In order to have a somewhat smooth experience with Turtle WoW, there are several injectors, DDLs, mods that will improve your performance to a degree, but it is just kind of supergluing the cracks a little bit, you know? It varies greatly between hardware. In my experience, at least, the older your computer is, it'll probably run better on the older client. Personally, I'm running on a 1080 Ti with 64 gigabytes of RAM, a brand spanking new SSD, i7 processor, and I occasionally dip to like 15 or 20 frames in an Axaramus run, and I cannot for the life of me do anything about it. While in contrast, I could play classic World of Warcraft at max frames with no problems whatsoever. I can play any other private server that isn't running on the ancient vanilla client. This is an issue of performance, but this isn't really the server's fault, it's just the client being ancient, and it will vary greatly between different players. But hopefully, with the release of the Unreal Engine's version of Turtle WoW 0.2 in 2025, allegedly, air quotes, 2025, this will be an issue of the past. Once the engine is swapped, you'll no longer have these issues. But I would be remiss to not mention the fact that the client is ancient, and that does have drawbacks. Though, on the flip side of things, the latency is basically non-existent. I have no problems whatsoever with my MS. At least, playing from England, the server side of things is pretty stable. It just has a slight issue of frame rate for me particularly. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've gone over the concerns, or the issues that may exist, which are minimal, honestly. At least 2 out of 3 are largely dismissed as being not even an issue or a concern worth having. So, keeping things in order, we move on to the leveling experience, the community, how it feels to start playing Turtle WoW and level from 1 to 60. And overall, it's a good experience. I can't really knock it. There are several different challenge modes that you can accomplish. Wanderer, where you only wear grey items. Hardcore mode, where your character only has 1 life. And several others, all of which have various different rewards once you hit max level. But for a brand new player, I'd probably suggest leaving the challenges for the next time around. For your first character, we'll assume that you're just leveling normally. In which case, if you've played World of Warcraft before, if you've played Classic or Vanilla, it's all very much as you remember it. Although several classes have been improved upon, as Turtle WoW is a Vanilla Plus server, the plus meaning extra content, primarily focused around the Warcraft aesthetic. One of the first things you might notice, in fact, is that the Alliance have High Elves, and the Horde have goblins. No, not that high elf, not that high elf. We'll get to that. That's a different segment of the video, okay? Let's not get distracted, lads. The goblins and the high elves both have their own unique starting zones. Total WoW has several of these areas that are custom content. Other areas include islands off the coast of Stranglethorn Vale, or Telebeam, off the coast of Tanaris. Venturing past the Great Wall of Gilneas is one of my favorite zones that they've made, with its own unique dungeon. And Hyjal is a classic unused area, or previously unused area, which now contains several endgame quests, and even a brand new raid called the Emerald Sanctum, which might sound interesting to you and fun, but for me, no. I have to stand behind the tree for the entire raid in order to do the hard mode, basically acting as a nature resistance totem. This wasn't part of the script, I just wanted to rant about that. I digress. Leveling up is fairly straightforward in Total WoW. Depending on the challenge modes, you can make it a more challenging experience. There is in fact a survival profession which allows you to craft tents. And if you stay underneath these tents for a short amount of time, you will gain extra rested experience, which ultimately makes you level up a lot faster. Going through the world and questing, you'll bump into plenty of players. The world feels pretty alive with the amount of players running around. The server's fairly populated. In my experience, at least leveling up, we never had any issue finding a group of players to do a particularly difficult quest. There's a lot of like-minded players running around the place trying to do the same stuff that you are. And most of them are pretty friendly. Most of them. There's this one guy called Redridge Boss in Redridge. And I have to admire that guy's dedication if you're watching this. I admire your dedication to being the biggest pain in my ass that has ever existed, okay? My advice to anybody playing on War Mode, which gives you increased XP at the cost of being PvP, is add Redridge Boss to your friends list and never go to Redridge whenever he is there, because it's not worth it. You will die like 20 times. But honestly, I like it. It doesn't annoy me too much. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. It's because it reminds me of the old school vanilla stuff back when community was still a thing in World of Warcraft, and I think that retail slowly lost that in a big way. So I like it. It feels like a living, breathing world to a degree. You have players, you meet them again. They're all the same people, so you can get a reputation for yourself like that Redridge Boss. And if you prefer to level via dungeons, that's also always an option. The only issue with dungeons, really, that I found was more or less just the eternal issue of you can't find a tank or a healer. Although we never had too much of an issue finding groups for this. Total WoW does have a automated group finding system that will basically invite players that want to do the dungeon. You will have to manually travel to the dungeon, but it will create the group for you. And if you have a lot of trouble finding a tank or a healer, maybe consider playing a tank or a healer. We always need more tanks and healers, goddammit. Overall, ladies and gentlemen, the leveling experience is much like you'd be used to from Classic or Old School Vanilla if you're ancient like me. It's always funner with friends, so maybe make some. One piece of advice I would give is once you get to level 60, if you make alts, do them on a second account, because you can then just play on the second account and boost your own alts with your level 60. That's allowed, apparently. As long as you're not doing anything automated and you're manually controlling everything, then it's fine. You can do that. It's something I wish I did way sooner than I actually realized it was doable. With leveling done and level 60 achieved, most players will want to get into raiding. Personally, coming from Classic, my approach was, I need to get my pre-raid bis. You really don't, honestly. You might look better to prospective guilds if you did show up with pre-raid bis, but it's honestly not required. Most guilds these days have cleared all of the content. They have everything on farm. The majority of their raiders don't need anything that you're going to need. So if you get into the right guild, you'll be showered with loot. More likely than not. And with new raiding content just around the corner with the release of Kara 40, now is a good time to get into raiding to get that gear, because guilds want to gear up new players. They want a strong roster moving forward to the new content. So it's the perfect time to slide in there and, I don't want to say steal, but acquire a bunch of gear. I personally got to level 60 in a few weeks, and within a month, I had more or less full tier 3, so, it's Yeah. You have to get into the right guild, but most guilds have this stuff on farm by now. They're just waiting for that new content that's right around the corner. It's in their interest to gear up new and reliable players. Chiefly reliable. Make yourself reliable, and the gear will fall from the sky like fucking rain. As for the raids, at the time of recording, you're looking at the usual vanilla stuff with some custom raids thrown in there. That means Molten Core, ZG, Blackwing Lair, AQ, 20 and 40, Naxxramas, but also the Emerald Sanctum and Lower Karazhan. And in the near future, we'll have Upper Karazhan, which is Karazhan 40, which introduces tier 3.5, and very far down the line, they are planning Grim Batol, which will be tier 4, with apparent emphasis on what appears to be gradually increasing difficulty, to the point where seeing someone in full tier 4 will be somewhat of a special, this guy is really good kind of thing. Like, he's put in the effort. Like, back in the day when you saw people in tier armor and you thought as your childlike brain, wow, that's cool, they kind of want to recapture that spark of coolness. So that if you see someone who's cleared Grim Batol and he's fully kitted out, it's, you know, it's an accomplishment, it's an achievement, a notable one. And I like that. I like that emphasis on, you know, unique accomplishments. Because, well, let's face it, vanilla content as it is well, it's really easy. There's very few fights that, you know, most of the difficulty from vanilla raiding comes from herding the 40 sheep in the raid to get them to do something coherently and not fuck up. That's where the difficulty lays. So it'll be nice to see new shiny fights with new mechanics and, you know, generally just a breath of fresh air. I'm looking forward to the new content. Speaking of new and shiny, ladies and gentlemen, we must address the melons in the room. Prior to the Unreal Engine update in 2025 and the Total WoW 2.0, in the present, you do have the option of the HD patch, which you'll be able to see right here. Basically, the HD patch introduces more retail and HD textures to the game. This is entirely optional. You can throw it on and off whenever you want. You just have to download the corresponding patches. And I personally have messed with the models. This is why I have Illidan's frickin' glaive and the corrupted Ashbringer on my hip. If you want to do that, you have to learn how to edit the frickin' files and stuff. It's client side, so nobody else can see it. But it looks cool. This is why my horse looks like a frickin' ZG tiger, ladies and gentlemen. If you're wondering why I'm saying fricking, it's because YouTube hates me. They will demonetize me for saying anything, so yeah. Nevertheless, the reason I personally use the HD patch is, one, it just looks better, and two, without the HD patch, the elf vanilla model looks like a skinny, anorexic tomboy. So, to each their own, ladies and gentlemen. But personally, if I'm going to look at a pixelated asset, I am going to look at a damn fine pixelated asset. For those of you wondering, when they do eventually release the Unreal Engine swap over, you will be able to switch between the modern graphics and the more vanilla style graphics, depending on what your tastes are. As we move away from the previous segments, we kind of move into bullet points, let's call them, smaller little pieces that I want to touch on real quick. The first thing that comes to mind would be the server economy, because I've heard some people claim that it's really hard to make gold on Total WoW, and I feel like this might scare some people off, but honestly, that's not been my experience whatsoever. On the contrary, it's incredibly easy to make gold, especially coming from a server like Mograine on Classic WoW, where the economy was completely broken. Total WoW doesn't have a boosting problem, it doesn't have a gold seller problem, it doesn't have a botting problem. In order to reduce the grind required to do raiding, Total WoW has essentially made all gathering professions way easier by increasing the amount of nodes in the world. So there's more mining, there's more herbs. It's just overall easier to get materials for anything that you want to craft, or sell for that matter. On top of the, 100 other gold-making opportunities that there are throughout the game, those potions that you take to raid persist through death. If you die, the vast majority of all of those potions that you farmed or paid for will not go away when you die. And anyone that raided during Classic can tell you that that saves you so much gold. If you die 100 times in the course of a 1 hour frickin' consumable duration, you haven't lost any money. This change alone removes so much of the tedious grind that used to be required in order to raid at like a peak level. And speaking of raiding at a peak level, world buffs don't work in raids. You can still go get the world buffs, but no longer will you be using world buffs in raids. This is a decision that Blizzard made in TBC for exactly the same reason that world buffs basically trivialize the content. And vanilla's content is already pretty trivialized by being vanilla, so world buffs are completely unnecessary. and also extremely time consuming. No longer do you need to go spend 2 hours before raid to get all of your buffs and get Songflower buff and then teleport across the map to get ZG buff and all that nonsense. So much time is saved by no longer having to do any of that, and no longer having to bring 12,000 consumables to every raid. You can still bring consumables, and I highly recommend you do, because if you die, you don't lose them, which personally is a massive, massive W for me. Honestly, because I don't have time to do all that grinding anymore. I simply don't. And speaking of the grind, ladies and gentlemen, PvP. We come to the PvP segment of the video. Woo! PvP. Honestly, I feel like Vanilla's PvP system with the battlegrounds of the ranking was iconic, but in reality, probably the worst PvP system that World of Warcraft's ever fucking done. Because it requires no skill. And maybe some of you are going to get upset about that, but it requires no skill. I speak as someone that got to rank 11 in Classic and then stopped because the gear was terrible and worse than the gear that I had. I just wanted the mount. I had to pre-made from like 6 o'clock in the morning until midnight with very little breaks for lunch, and I had to do it all day, every day, for months, just to get rank 11. None of this required a great deal of skill. It mostly just required a hell of a lot of time. And honestly, Turtle WoW's PvP scene isn't much different. It is a lot easier. It requires a lot less of that grind, because the developers do seem to not want people to have to spend their entire lives on the game to enjoy it. In direct comparison to how Classic ranking worked, I have achieved rank 11 on Turtle WoW without really trying and without ever entering a pre-made, and only playing for a couple of hours a day, mostly. It's still a time investment, and I don't think I'll go for rank 14, but one of the good things about Turtle is your rank will not decay. So if you want to, like I'm pretty much going to, get, say, rank 11, and then not do PvP for a while, you can just do that, and come back and pick up from where you left off. Oh, and if you're interested in Arena, Turtle WoW has a Blood Ring, which is basically Arena, and also a custom battleground called Sunnyglade or Sunnyvale. I forget which one it is. I forget because it's extremely unbalanced and needs a complete rework, by the way. Devs, if you're watching this, I'm pretty sure you've already said that you're reworking that, but yeah, it needs a facelift. It definitely needs work. I like the concept. The concept for that battleground is actually pretty interesting. I like it. It just needs a lot of work. Speaking of needing some work, ladies and gentlemen, we come now to this sensitive topic of donations, or microtransactions, or whatever you want to call them. Out of the gate, I will disclose, Turtle WoW is free to play. You can install it and play it and never spend a penny. So I don't have any necessary problems with microtransactions in a game that's free to play. At the end of the day, these guys have employees or team members on the payroll that they are paying to work on the game. The money has to come from somewhere. It's a lot of work and effort and labor and love put into the project, so I won't gripe on them for monetizing that. All donations are optional, they're all cosmetic or some quality of life items, and ultimately, if you don't want to give them any money, you don't have to give them any money. All of that said, however, I can't help but draw a comparison to Ascension WoW's store page, which I argue is far superior and far more enticing for me to actually put aside a little bit of money to buy some stuff. I think the UI needs a big overhaul. Maybe that's an engine limitation, I don't know. I think a lot more options, a lot better discounts, because honestly, some of the pricing is pretty steep, and I feel like with some work, some improvements, maybe better pricing, more frequent donation discounts, they could make a lot more money and get a lot more support if it was a bit more player friendly. Because really, come on, you have a 6-year anniversary and give us a 6% off? Like, 6% off. That's... Like, what? Dude, do 66% off, and so many more people would buy stuff. So many more people would buy stuff at 66% off for like a week, or like, you know, a couple days. Just do it for 24 hours for the anniversary. Who fought 6%? Come on, guys. Seriously. Give more options for small donations, entice people with better discounts more frequently, and you will get so much more support. Because someone is far more willing and likely to spend 5 quid far more frequently than they are likely to spend 30 quid. I don't have a problem with the donation page. It's free to play. It is what it is. My criticism is that you could be doing it better, from like a marketing standpoint. A more reasonable range of prices with more frequent discounts of significant size. 6% is not significant, and I guarantee that you'd get more purchases. and more support. That's just my opinion on that matter, particularly. It lasted longer than I'd expected, but I started to rant and got a bit passionate there for a second. It comes from a place of wanting this to succeed, so I hope it doesn't get me banned. Jokes aside, ladies and gentlemen, we'll wrap up the video here. I do believe I've covered pretty much every topic there is to cover. Overall, I've enjoyed my time with Total WoW, and I really like the emphasis on lessening the grind. It's easy to make money, you don't have to worry about consumables, because those consumables are 1, cheap, and 2, persist through death. So it doesn't matter how many times you wipe in a raid, you don't have to worry so much about spending 1,000 gold every raid or anything ridiculous like that. The leveling still takes a while to get to level 60, but is helped by those tents and the survival mechanic, which basically fills up your rested bar to full. And ultimately, I'm looking forward to the new content. The existing stuff is vanilla, so vanilla's like, I mean, it's not difficult for any stretch of the imagination. So I am looking forward to the upcoming Kara 40 when it releases this month, air quotes. Allegedly, air quotes. We'll see. I look forward to actually doing some kind of progression in vanilla, like in the vanilla setting, actually doing content that nobody knows how to do. I very much look forward to. And probably going to die 1,000 times. But hey, the consumables last through death, so it's not really that big of a deal. And so long as Karazhan doesn't have any kind of raid mechanic that requires our guild to not stand in green slime, we're gonna be fine. Probably, maybe.
Move
To the other
into the
side,
goon.
gargoyles are here. Jump to the other side. To the other side.
Okay.
What a fucking circus! Holy shit! There's no way! There's no way!
Happy birthday, guys!
No. All raid vibe.
We should all just delete our characters now and just,
I'm
you know.
collecting this, posting it online.
I'm recording this shit, that's the funny part.
God!
This is going in the video.